You handed us a stack of sources that detail a full-scale descent from corporate burnout into radical anarchy and domestic terrorism.
Mm-hmm.
So today we're taking a deep dive into that material. It's excerpts from the story of a man, his alter ego, and the just bizarre, precise, and profoundly dangerous manual for living offered by Tyler Durden.
And our mission here is to unpack not just the plot, but the specific, often really surprising nuggets of knowledge that fuel this whole thing. Tyler Durden isn't a concept. He's an expert, armed with technical solutions for chaos.
And the genesis of all this chaos is maybe the most relatable thing in the world. Peak modern misery. Our narrator starts trapped in a corporate life. He's a recall campaign coordinator.
And the sources lay out the exact mechanism that's destroying his soul.
Yeah.
He's responsible for calculating human liability. It's this formula. A times B times C equals X.
Right. A is the number of cars, B is the probable rate of failure, and C is the average cost of an out-of-court settlement.
And if X, the total cost of paying for casualties, is less than the cost of a recall.
They don't do the recall.
They don't do the recall. It is the ultimate dehumanization. Yeah. Human life is just cold arithmetic. And our narrator is the one doing the math, and it's paralyzing him. This is where the crippling insomnia comes from.
So he looks for some kind of release. The sources say he starts going to support groups, lying about having diseases just to feel something real.
And he finds this temporary, really fragile peace at groups like Remaining Men Together. It's a support circle for men recovering from testicular cancer.
Such a specific, strange detail.
It's a very peculiar kind of catharsis. He finds he can cry safely into the chest of this guy, Big Bob Paulson, and the material gives us this memorable detail about Bob. He was a former weightlifter who used steroids.
A juicer.
Exactly. And those steroids, the high testosterone, it cost him his testicles. So he goes on hormone therapy, and his body tries to balance itself by upping the estrogen.
Which leads to the bizarre result noted in the sources. Big Bob developed bitch tits. He becomes this giant, comforting symbol of masculinity just gone medically wrong.
But that piece is completely shattered when Marla Singer shows up.
Another faker.
Another faker. She's a tourist, and she violates his safe space. He loses his one emotional outlet, and that frustration, that's what triggers the psychological rupture. Tyler Durden is born.
And what's fascinating is the narrator wanted self-improvement, a better apartment, nice furniture. Tyler offers the complete opposite.
Radical, targeted self-destruction.
Yeah. He is the philosophical opposite of the corporate man. Tyler's whole belief system is in that one line. Only after disaster can we be resurrected.
The narrator's problem was that he had too much to lose. A job, a condo. Tyler argues that owning things is just a cage.
So the only path to freedom is to lose it all. It's only after you've lost everything, he says, that you're free to do anything.
But he's not just a nihilist. He doesn't just embrace chaos, he weaponizes very specific practical knowledge.
And that's the core irony we have to get into. The narrator was an accountant of destruction, calculating failure rates. Tyler becomes a scientist of destruction.
Exactly. And the meticulous nature of his chaos is what makes it so much more than just, vandalism.
Okay, let's get into those bizarre how-to facts from the source material. It reads almost like a dark chemistry textbook.
Oh, it really does. He knows mechanics, chemistry. For instance, the material details how to make a silencer. It's not about muffling the sound. It's about slowing the bullet below the speed of sound.
Oh.
By drilling holes in the barrel. It lets the expanding gases escape before the bullet leaves. It's scientific precision applied to murder.
And the goal isn't just small scale. It's massive damage, like demolishing the 191 floor Parker Morris building. That takes military-grade explosives.
Which, of course, Tyler knows how to make. The sources detail how to make nitroglycerin. They mention specific acids, glycerin added slowly in an ice bath to manage the reaction.
And once it's stabilized,
you can combine it with absorbents like sawdust or cotton and Epsom salts, and you get a moldable plastic explosion.
Hold on. Let's just pause on that. The narrator's job involved cold, precise calculations about chemical failures in cars.
Mm-hmm.
And now, his alter ego is applying equally precise, meticulous chemical ratios to build bombs. It's like his corporate discipline just got redirected toward chaos.
Exactly. The corporate man isn't running from precision. He's redirecting it. He's trying to create a disaster big enough to escape that A times B times C formula, but using the same intellectual rigor to do it.
And nothing shows the bizarre nature of Tyler's knowledge more than the recipes for napalm.
I know. The source material is so specific. It lists 3 ways to make it, including mixing equal parts gasoline with either frozen orange juice concentrate
Or Diet Cola. It's the most absurd detail.
It's the perfect blend of suburban banality and catastrophic potential. The idea is that Tyler uses mundane, everyday objects for revolutionary ends, and this knowledge is used to target buildings like the Parker Morris because the goal is the destruction of every scrap of history.
Which takes us from philosophy to infrastructure, Fight Club, and then Project Mayhem.
Right. Fight Club starts as just primal scream therapy. The rules are simple. Rules 1 and 2, don't talk about it. Rule 7, if it's your first night, you have to fight.
And the sources show the effect on these men. They come in as white bread, soft, and this brutal catharsis transforms them into men who look carved out of wood. They feel saved.
But Tyler knows that's not enough. Individual catharsis won't fund a revolution. He needs cash. He needs a manufacturing base.
Which brings us to the financial engine of all this.
Yeah.
The Paper Street Soap Company.
A truly bizarre business model.
So the process itself is ancient saponification. The narrator needs to wash his bloody clothes, and Tyler teaches him. Boil fat, skim it, mix it with lye.
But the truly shocking part, the essential twist, is the source of the fat. Tyler explains that the best, most expensive soap isn't from industrial-grade stuff, it's from human fat, specifically liposuctioned waste.
So wait, let me get this straight for everyone listening. The source material reveals Tyler is literally getting human fat from medical waste dumps, including fat from Marla Singer's mother. The byproduct of affluent corporate vanity is being harvested.
That is the gruesome, efficient process. And the reason that fat is so valuable is key. When you boil it and skim it, you separate out pure glycerin.
And the connection just lands with this devastating clarity. Glycerin, separated from the fat of the wealthy,
is then mixed with nitric acid to create nitroglycerin.
Vanity is literally funding terrorism. The very excesses of the class the narrator tried to escape are being repurposed to destroy their entire system.
It's a perfect grotesque economy. Tyler even gives it this historical context, this story about human sacrifices on an altar and the fat mixing with lye and rain to create the first soap. He elevates it to, like, a religious ritual.
So once the cash is flowing, Fight Club evolves into Project Mayhem, a structured, militarized organization
dedicated to the complete and right-away destruction of civilization.
And here's the irony. Tyler hates corporate structure, but he just creates another bureaucracy of destruction. He's got committees: arson, assault, mischief, misinformation.
He's just replaced the cubicle with a bunker, and the recruitment process is ruthless. Applicants, these space monkeys, have to wait 3 days on the porch, no shelter, no encouragement, just to prove they're subservient.
And the required inventory is just as bizarre. 2 black shirts, 2 black pants, and $500 cash.
Which they explicitly call personal burial money.
Right. So Project Mayhem is never burdened with an autopsy. It's all about the system. No questions, no lies, no excuses. Trust Tyler.
And their tactics are just designed to create this low-grade chaos. The material confirms things like sabotaging food in nice restaurants, exploding toilet tanks in rich suburbs. They paint that 5-story angry pumpkin demon mask on the Hind Tower.
They also do info warfare, printing subversive bumper stickers. My favorite is drunk drivers against mothers. It's just designed to confuse. The movement gives identity to these men Tyler calls God's middle children.
But as it grows, the narrator starts to realize the physical cost. He's waking up with bruises he can't explain. He realizes Tyler Durden isn't a partner.
He's a split personality, active only when the narrator is asleep.
The ultimate betrayal of the self. Tyler confirms it. He's been living the narrator's life, working his job, spending his money, and building this whole movement.
And the clues were everywhere. Tyler only appears when Marley is gone, but the real confirmation comes when a bartender calls him Mr. Durden.
And then reveals he knows about a secret birthmark the narrator didn't even know he had.
A birthmark shaped like Australia and New Zealand.
Chilling. It's the complete loss of bodily autonomy. Tyler explains his rationale. They have no special place in history, so the only way to matter is to destroy history itself. Burn the Louvre.
But the movement becomes a fatal feedback loop. The system he built turns on him.
The turning point is the death of Big Bob Paulson, the comforting giant.
Shot by police during a chill and drill assignment. They thought his cordless drill was a gun. The narrator, seeing his emotional anchor die, finally tries to shut it all down.
But it's too late. Project Mayhem has achieved critical mass. When he tries to stop them, they refuse. They just chant this terrifying mantra.
We are all part of Tyler Durden, and vice versa.
Yeah, he's no longer in control.
So he tries to escape the final plan, blowing up the Parker Morris building, But the space monkeys capture him on a bus. They threaten to castrate him, calling it homework assignment.
And they cite the rules he wrote as Tyler. The bureaucracy of chaos consumes him. Tyler's final goal is revealed. The narrator's martyrdom. Blowing up the building with both of them on the roof.
Which sets up this final confrontation.
Right.
The narrator and Tyler struggle, and the narrator finally pulls the trigger of the gun that's in his own mouth.
And in that moment, Tyler dies. The narrator is left with this gunshot wound, a jagged smile from ear to ear. But crucially, the main objective, destroying the building. It fails.
And the reason it fails is another one of those incredibly specific source details. He wakes up in what seems like a hospital, and he realizes why the explosives didn't go off. Tyler had mixed the blasting gelatin with paraffin.
Which the narrator bitterly notes never ever worked for me.
It's the ultimate double cross.
It is. Tyler, for all his dark genius, built a fatal flaw into his own master plan. The narrator's old self, that cautious, detail-oriented personality, ensured the bombs were duds. Corporate precision saves the day, even in the middle of annihilation.
But the irony doesn't stop. The narrator is confined, but Project Mayhem continues. The movement sees his disappearance as the ultimate act of martyrdom. It confirms the mission.
He starts getting these chilling messages. Everything's going according to the plan. We're going to break up civilization so we can make something better out of the world. The ideology has become unstoppable. He's a legend for the chaos he tried to stop.
It brings us right back to the beginning, back to that source of pain. The narrator was paralyzed by a world that reduces human value to a liability formula, A times B times C equals X.
And he was so desperate to escape that equation that he manufactured this dangerous, meticulously structured rebellion.
Which raises a crucial question for you, the listener. If finding specific, powerful knowledge, even knowledge of self-destruction and chaos, is the only way to feel free from the formulas of modern life, what specialized knowledge are you willing to seek out? And at what personal cost to your own safety, your sanity, or your identity?
A provocative thought.
A truly provocative thought. That's all the time we have for this deep dive.